John Smith, Extension Field Crops Pathologist and Professor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Today we're standing on the Arlington Prairie in Wisconsin, specifically at the Arlington Ag Research Station. We're looking at a field of soft red winter wheat that actually has Fusarium head blight. So the fungus that causes Fusarium head blight is called Fusarium graminearum. And had you been here about 3 weeks ago, we would have been at the bloom time of this wheat, and that's when the fungus actually infects the plants, is through those flowers. The disease is problematic not only because it can take yield through small grain or grain that never fully forms, but the fungus can also produce a mycotoxin, and that mycotoxin is toxic to both animals and humans. So after the infections happen, you want to come back about 3 weeks after you think that the anthesis is complete. And that's a great time to actually scout for the disease. And as you can see here, we actually have quite a few heads that actually have symptoms here. And what you're looking for are going to be these bleached heads. And you can see random levels of scattered heads out here. When you're scouting, you're looking for the bleached part of these heads. And you can have a range of symptomology here from single or double hits. You see a single hit here, a couple of double hits, and then even all the way on up to more significant bleaching of the head. If we were out here in the early morning with some dew, we could actually see, occasionally you'll see some pink to sort of salmon-colored sporulation of the fungus. We don't see that here today, but it is certainly something that's very diagnostic for this disease when you're scouting. So the disease, once it infects the kernel itself, it actually grows down in there and consumes the carbohydrates of that kernel. And so it actually can shrivel that kernel up, making it undersized. And we can actually see shrunken kernels. We actually look at those, and we call those Fusarium damaged kernels, and we can actually rate for those Fusarium damaged kernels. Different animals have different levels of sensitivity. Pigs and chickens are pretty sensitive. Therefore, the concentrations that are allowed are actually quite lower for those particular animals. For humans and human consumption, we usually see dockage at the elevator start around 2 parts per million. So we like to keep those concentrations down below that 2 part per million level. If they start to creep up, we start to see dockage at the elevator, and of course, that also becomes a risk for human consumption as well. The wheat that we're seeing here today, this is like the optimal time to really look at it. So this is about, like I said, about 3 weeks after the infections happen. You can see the wheat starting to ripen up a bit. We're starting to see that green color go away, and we're really starting to see the actual damage here in terms of these bleached heads. So now is a great time to look at this, try to get an idea which fields have higher levels of Fusarium head blight or not, and then you can prioritize some things at harvest time based on the level of damage in the field. So if you determine you have a field like this that's got quite a bit of damage there, what you want to do is start to look at your combine and combine settings. One of the best ways to mitigate high mycotoxin levels in the finished grain is to try to do a good job at harvest time cleaning the grain. So hopefully you have adjusted your combine to optimal standard settings to maximize yield. And if you get into a field with high levels of Fusarium head blight, you can actually turn the fan speed up and open the shutter opening up a bit to help increase air volume and air speed a bit. That helps push those damaged kernels, those Fusarium damaged kernels out and leaves them in the field. The downside of adjusting those combine settings, though, the higher airflow, is that you will see a bit of yield loss. Some of the smaller intact kernels will be lost. But the trade-off, the work done at Ohio State with combine settings has shown that trade-off can be negligible in a field with high levels of Fusarium head blight. So you do need to be careful and make sure you know what the optimal settings of your combine are, and then adjust accordingly depending on whether you're in a Fusarium head blight heavy field or in a field that's healthier. I would keep those standard settings in a good healthy field to maximize yield, and then up that fan speed and open the shutter, opening up a bit in the Fusarium head blight damaged areas. So in terms of the actual combine settings that we're talking about here, if you have Fusarium head blight, Specifically, the work done at Ohio State showed us that the fan RPM should be about 100 RPMs higher than what the standard would be. And in their work, that was 1,375 RPMs on their particular combine. In terms of the shutter opening, we'd want to go up about 20 millimeters on that shutter opening. And on their combine, the standard shutter opening was about 70 millimeters. So they went up to about 90 millimeters on their particular combine. As always, it's good to know what your standard settings are, and then you can adjust accordingly for those fields where you need to clean out those Fusarium damaged kernels. We like to see soybeans actually come behind wheat, so that's a nice rotation. That's a non-grass crop. So one of the downsides with this particular pathogen, it is transmitted primarily among the grass crops. So if you come in with corn tight in rotation with wheat, those are both hosts for Fusarium. So you do need to be a little bit careful of those grass crops. So again, we like soybeans. It's a pretty good rotation here and can help reduce the inoculum potential behind wheat. If you'd like to learn more about Fusarium head blight, you can visit the Badger Crop Doc website or the OGRAIN website. You can find those links in the credits below, or you can visit your local extension agent.